The reason I asked him, though, to interview him is because he consistently asked the best questions of any student I've ever had. Questions that really got to the center of things, or questions that, gosh, that should have been mentioned, but it wasn't. It was overlooked. So I've given him license to ask whatever he wants. And I didn't promise I'd answer. Did I? Did I promise I'd answer anything? Anything that's relevant. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ryan. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. And yeah, a few things to do as far as housekeeping and introductions and everything. Thank you everyone for joining us. And I'm excited to be here with Jason. Jason, as I said in the introduction, has been formative and forming me and coaching me and helping me become who you see me becoming, who you see me presenting myself as in the world. And about the question thing, the reason that I think I've made such quick progress under his tutelage and also working with other people is because I wasn't afraid to ask the stupid questions and wasn't afraid to look stupid asking them. So let me recommend to you, if you're here, if you want to ask questions or send questions also that we cover with Jason, we may wait for them till the end, but go ahead and put those into the chat rather than muting yourself, and then we'll get to them all at the end. Does that sound like a deal, Jason?
Sounds like a deal to me.
Okay.
By the way, the way to get the most out of me, because I, never know what I might say, is to ask questions. And you're probably not the only one thinking whatever that question is. So.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm Ryan Auroch, and Jason's introduced me a little bit, but I work with sexuality professionals and building their practices and making a huge impact in the world. And Jason, my goodness, you read a little bit about him on the webinar page and on the Facebook event, but he is, not only has he had an incredible life, but he's not afraid of sharing that life and sharing the lessons that he's learned and sharing who he is. We know he's incredibly competent. He's worked with in the Tony Robbins organization as a high-up mucky-muck 20 years ago, I believe. Master NLP practitioner, has a whole string of credentials, and friends have called him the encyclopedia of all things personal development.
Cliff Notes, not nearly as as encyclopedia. The Cliff Notes.
Okay, the Cliff Notes of all things. Well, I see him as the encyclopedia. That tells you what kind of value I get from him. I bring in questions all the time about all sorts of crazy stuff, and it's just like he just starts rattling off literally, as much content as you can use about any topic. He's an expert. Nathaniel Brandon's work that he's customized himself and created ego development, looking at value versus worth issues. I could go on and on about his technical expertise, his skills as a coach and a mentor and a teacher. But I also wanted to give everyone the opportunity to get to know him a little bit better as a person. So we're going to do that a little bit today. And also talk about some ways to dive in with him as we move towards finishing the call. All right? So, does that sound good?
Sounds good to me.
All right.
I hope it sounds good to them.
Sound good to everybody else? Okay, right. So what we're going to do here, I'm looking off camera to find some questions here sometimes. So pay attention. Don't worry if I seem like I'm distracted. I'm not. I'm just staying with our conversation. Oh yeah, Jason said something funny. We will use adult language and adult themes. So we're going to talk about real life in this experience today and what
can I say fuck
been through. I think you can say whatever you want. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
This is the naked interview after all. Okay, so you know what? Maybe you can introduce yourself more deeply than I have. Talk a little bit about your story. What would you like to share?
I thought you were asking the questions.
Well, I mean, what's the story of Jason?
Yeah, the story of Jason. Well, it started in prison. I got convicted of my third felony right before the 3 strikes law passed in California over 20 years ago. And, I did about 2.5 years in there. When I got in, I realized I didn't fit in at all. And that, this was sort of a subculture that they had accepted for themselves. And me, I was just engaged in malicious mischief as far as I was concerned. But when I got in, I went, well, this is serious. And the 3 strikes law passed. I went, well, that's really serious. which means if I committed another felony, it was 25 years to life, and I narrowly avoided that. And somebody doing a life sentence handed me a book by Tony Robbins and said, I think you might like this. And Tim Smith, D60807. And that, book transformed my life, because I knew I needed to change, but I just didn't know how. And the Tony Robbins, and the NLP material really helped me do that. Transform my childhood and meaning and just the way I manage my own mind and all of that. So it starts there. I don't necessarily recommend that as a professional path for people. You don't need to go to prison. Just something, that's not part of the course. It's not a prerequisite. And, it really starts there. And then I got out. I was very lucky to do a short period of time. I got out and met somebody who said, do you want to do an NLP practitioner training? And I said, wow, you can get certified in that stuff? And got certified as a practitioner. And that's back when they used to mean something. It was a 6-month training. And now they're sort of on an assembly line. And they're teaching you how to do NLP on people, but not with them, is the primary distinction. So there's a lack of ecology. And, it's really about manipulating people, hopefully for their own purpose. But part of the certification when I was doing it was that you demonstrated respect for the ecology of the being, which means, them as a person, their family system, their community, and the world at large. And without doing that, then you're simply, a really great something, but not what we would consider an NLP practitioner. Then the trainer training and the master practitioner training. And then I tried to, right around that time, my father committed suicide. We'll get to that later, but I tried to hang my coaching plank out at 25 years old, because Tony did it, right? And I hated sales. I hated marketing. I thought they were ruining the pure science, man, of NLP. And realized that if I didn't learn how to, inspire people to take action for things that it didn't make sense to me. They said they wanted this for years. Why wouldn't they? Well, there's lots of reasons why they wouldn't do that. So I realized I needed to learn sales. So I gritted my teeth and went to work for the Anthony Robbins organization, selling and training the power to influence sales training, which is a horrible way to learn sales, also a brilliant way to learn sales. Selling sales to salespeople, car dealerships, mortgage brokerages. Car dealerships always thought we were lying about stuff that was in writing. I don't know why. Maybe you have some insight. What was the question?
Yeah, well, let's go back. I mean, so you wanted one thing. What were you in prison for? This is the question. This is the
right.
Some questions.
Well, I used to have a hobby that was frowned upon. It was stealing brand new sports cars off car lots. They used to have the lock boxes on the window. Actually, some of them still do, sadly. And you can drill. Actually, so I was stealing brand new sports cars off car lots. Tell anybody how to steal a car in 60 seconds. I'd say that's a different webinar, but it's not going to be.
Right. Okay. So mischief, and you didn't have the easiest childhood, and I think that's not something you don't talk about a lot. We did mention it briefly, but obviously a kid who's stealing cars at 19 maybe didn't have the most loving, supportive family life growing up, and so I don't know if you want to comment about that, but.
Yeah, I mostly don't talk about my childhood because the rest of the life story is so grueling for people to go through that I just sort of skip over 0 to 18.
Right.
I'll give a couple highlights though. My first memory at 4 years old is being kicked in the chest through a door. My father kicked me in the chest because I tried to flush an apple core down the toilet, and it's. Why couldn't you? I mean, I've seen other bigger things go down there than an apple core. And he was a black belt in hung guard, tiger crane. So he was a martial artist. He started training me when I was 5, which is, people ask me if I was in the military, sometimes just because of the way I look at them. I go, no, it wouldn't last a day, But I was a martial artist from the age of 5 to 15. But my father was, brilliant in some ways. He had me read In Search of Excellence when I was 13. And his views on sexuality are the reason that I have never experienced shame. And you know, he was the first one to mention modeling to me. If you don't know how to do something, find somebody who does it really well and just do what they do, right? And there I am, you know, 12 years old. And I knew more about sex and how to please a woman by the time I was, you know, 14 than most guys ever learned. So I was very fortunate. And in virtually every other area, he was, you know, considered a monster. So that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, no, and the thing is, when somebody starts from that perspective, they could go to prison and stay in prison. Like you said, it was a lifestyle for some of these people.
Yeah, I'd actually fortunately completed my relationship with him when I was in there several years before he committed suicide, because of my childhood, you know. And I sent him a letter, a very great letter, taking responsibility for where I was at, and, you know, separating that out and saying, and this stuff happened in my childhood, and none of it was okay. He sent me the letter back saying addressee deceased in someone else's handwriting. And at the time I had about 5 minutes access to a phone once a week at this prison way up in Northern California. And it took me 3 weeks to find out he was actually still alive. You know, he was just fucking with me. And he fortunately sent the letter back. So I sent it to my mom, you know, and I said, she goes, he says you're blaming him for where you're at. And I said, well, why don't you read the letter? You tell me. And she, of course, was amazed that none of that was in the letter. There was no blame at all. Just a lot of me taking responsibility. And that's separate from that is, you know, this wasn't okay. So he was in denial. I'll just go into the self-esteem thing real quick, if you don't mind.
Sure.
He was in denial about who he was. This is my interpretation based on events I found out a month after he died, what had happened. His third wife, whom, you know, he'd really abused physically, mentally, emotionally, verbally, everybody he'd ever been around, with the exception maybe of my little sister, maybe. No, actually, yeah, I'm not going to talk about that for her sake. So he was really in denial. And his best friend told me that he got on his knees crying with my letter saying that it was all lies. So, you know, so he'd saved his third wife from an abusive marriage. And she says, this is her story, you know, I have no reason to disbelieve her. She said that they had made love and she went to the bathroom to clean up. She came back and he, like, for no reason, just hit her. And she said, do you realize what you just did? You don't have to call the police now. And he looked at her and he pulled the phone out of the wall and said, well, why don't you go get me a beer and we'll talk about it. And when she was in the kitchen, he blew his brains out. And I have it that he couldn't handle the cascade of reality that came down on him when she said, do you realize what you just did? And he faced the fact that he had never, you know, he abused everybody and been denial to everybody and even to himself about it. And so he couldn't handle the load of reality, the level of self-acceptance it would have required more ego development, more higher self-esteem. And, you know, it would have had him not do those things. Anyway, those, you know, who knows? Maybe she made it all up, but it makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Can I jump in here? And I think what you're saying, and I love this because you're the self-esteem ego development expert par excellence. And so can you take a couple of, so that story illustrates what happens when you deny what you're doing, don't take responsibility for your actions. Can you talk a little bit about what you learned from that, what your policy is on relationships and life and business, and then how you help your clients with these same issues?
Yeah. So I only have you know, everybody has rules for relationships. They usually come out as, well, everybody knows. They don't, by the way. Or, you know, you should this, or I love the everybody knows thing. I always go, oh, really? Everybody, huh? You know?
Right.
But I really have, you know, 2 or 3 basic rules. And first is there's no second chances on violence. One violent act and I'm gone. There isn't a, let's talk about that thing for me. It's it. But I let people know, you know, like second date kind of thing, that's my one no second chance rule. The other is, though, you just tell the truth and you hear the truth. And I've found that is a simple but very difficult thing. So it encompasses a few things. It requires a few things. It requires self-acceptance, really. Like that it doesn't matter to you if somebody thinks you're weird or if somebody, you know, doesn't like you anymore. What matters is you have an agreement to tell the truth. And that could look like complimenting them. You know, people don't express positive things a lot. I'm speaking of this woman I've been, I'll say, courting. And she said, you know, thank you for all the compliments. And I said, you know, just so you know, I'm not trying to compliment you. Not that I don't want you to, you know, enjoy that. But it's just me saying like what I'm thinking. It's just me going, I really appreciate this about you, or really enjoy that about you. It's not intended in any way to be complimentary, even though it is. But it's just I don't want to, you know, why withhold that back? Why hold any of that back? And I think there's just not enough, you know, authentic expression. But that could also mean, you know, you did this thing and it made me really uncomfortable, and, you know, and make a request around that. But it really is just about telling the truth and then hearing the truth. You don't want to be the excuse that people use to not tell the truth. And while you might have a bunch of stuff going on when they say something that's difficult for you to hear, I have it, especially with a woman when she's expressing something to you. The only appropriate response is, thank you for sharing that. You know, you can talk about the rest of it later, but in terms of hearing the truth, you want to make sure that you are always a safe space to tell the truth. Otherwise, they will. I mean, people are sensitive. They're far more sensitive than they let on, and they are already looking for proof that it's not safe to tell the truth.
Right, we grow up in worlds where it's not safe to tell the truth. So that simple tip is gigantic for most of us.
Yeah.
And how do you find that this self-acceptance and telling the truth, how does it get in the way of people or when they're building their business or building a practice?
Well, it doesn't get in the way.
Well, I mean, how does not telling the truth get in the way then? Yeah.
I wanted to make one more point.
Okay.
I don't remember what it was. Relationships, telling the truth. Self-acceptance. So let me say a little bit about self-acceptance. I think it's important. Self-acceptance does not mean to go, I'm an asshole, you're just gonna have to deal with it. I've accepted myself. That's not what it means at all. It means having a profound relationship to the truth about yourself. So not being in denial is what self-acceptance means. And to say, yeah, I did that, and, you know, let's look at what I need to do to avoid that in the future. So it's really about telling the truth to yourself about yourself. Self-acceptance has the paradoxical effect, well, having just defined it, maybe it's not so paradoxical, of accelerating your evolution, not slowing it down. So I just want to say that about self-acceptance, so people understood what we were talking about.
So yeah, so you can't actually move beyond anything or improve if you're denying what is right now, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah. So it's very, yeah.
Great. Thank you.
In business, you know, it gets in the way because people all the time, they're in context. And by the way, when I say context, I mean all kinds of relationships and communities and careers, whatever, that are unfulfilling.
Right.
And they don't express that. Or they're working with clients they don't really want to work with, and they're, you know, lying to themselves about that. Or they're really like, you know, I tried to mainstream myself for, how long did we determine? 15 years or something? And, you know, forgot about this whole, like, liberate people sexually thing that I was, you know, up to when I was 25. Like, it's really what I'm supposed to be here to do. And, you know, it's even now, it's, you know, some of that's gotten pushed by the wayside in the last couple of months, even after it was revealed again in November. So,
well, there's different levels, definitely, of, you know, finding yourself and expressing that. But yeah.
Now, the weird thing is, you know, in a non-dual world, what's authentic?
That's right.
if all you are is the consciousness that's experiencing all of it, and the rest of it's objects in your awareness, what's really authentic? You know, that's a really high level question with depth. You know, for most people, they're really clear what's authentic and what's not for them. You know, you've been at the game 20 or so years, then you've got a lot more choice and a lot more latitude. You've also got far more responsibility in every interaction than the other person does, but that's another conversation.
Right. I think we need to kind of move to the next, please, because this could be a 5-hour conversation, I see already. So I was going to say, the first question was, well, the next question was, what holds holistic? Oh, by the way, we have the request that we both speak a little bit slower. So
Oh gosh.
yeah, so we'll both have to work.
Let me get my heroin. Hang on.
So what are the things that hold people back
That was a joke, everybody.
in their business? What holds people back most? And we're going to come through the keys. So what are the keys to being successful? And then after that, what holds people back in these keys? What don't they do?
The keys, is that the components thing?
Yeah, let's start with that. Yeah.
So there's 3 components that are necessary to build a 6-figure. And when we say 6-figure, we mean $108,000 annually. 3 components and 1 principle, I'll say. And the principle is to be a living example of your work. Don't be overweight and be, doing weight loss programs, or, don't be morbidly obese, and don't have just a bunch of wreckage behind you with relationships, and be a relationship coach. There's some exceptions to that. Maybe you've had a few failed marriages and you learned a lot from it, and now you're in an amazing marriage. Great. But don't be just it's basic integrity. I don't think it's going to be okay anymore. I remember one of the sort of 2 sides of NLP, the dark side of the force, which is, Bandler, and then John Grinder, who was the ecology guy. And Richard Bandler would be there, teaching addictions, and he'd be chain smoking on stage. It's just like, dude, come on, man. And I asked somebody about it one time who trained with him. I asked her, she's one of my mentors, and I said, why hasn't Richard Bandler freed himself from like the cocaine, like he's massively overweight, the chain smoking? She goes, he's freed himself from the need to free himself. And I went, all right, but that doesn't work. People are looking for whether or not maybe not even know how to describe it, but they're looking for you to be in alignment. So that's the principle. And then the 3 components are to have a sales system and to use it. It should include formalized referral systems. To have free, accessible content so people can get a sense of you, a sense of your competence, and they have a reason to pay attention to you and stay, engaged. And then the last is to have a comprehensive package or series of sessions. None of those are optional, by the way. If you want to build a business, in something faster than 3 or 4 years, and you just do it by referral, which is how most people think of it. They just think it takes 2 to 5 years to build your business, because all they do is think about word of mouth or maybe some advertising, which is the biggest waste of money ever. Yeah.
Okay. Someone asked the question, and I think it's great. They said, can we repeat those 3, please? So.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah. So can you do that again, or I can do it?
Have a sales system and to use it.
Mm-hmm. So having a sales system and using it, right?
Yeah. And then having free accessible content. And those would be highlights, would be webinars like this. Live introductory talks in person are really important for if you're working one-on-one with people. You're more likely to have a higher rate of conversion in person. They just have a deeper sense of you. Geography is, challenging, and technology freezes from that. I get it. And I still say that in person is best for that.
Yes.
And to have a comprehensive package or series of sessions so that they have sustainability of change and you have financial sustainability. But really, the more you are in this business and are helping people, you'll learn that for deep, lasting change, it requires the context to be in place for a while. Otherwise, our lives would be transformed after a 3-day weekend, not transformed for a few days and then back to, the same old crap. It requires us to be in a context. You wouldn't go to the chiropractor once and expect your spine to be transformed. So why do we go to somebody once and, expect it to transform, or one weekend to transform our lives? It's not the way it works. And it's the big lie that gets told. Now, your perspectives, what you think is possible, can be transformed forever through that weekend. But even that'll fade if you start to look at the habit patterns that come up and you go, oh, well, maybe it didn't, right? And then you start to talk yourself out of the fact that it actually did transform your perspectives, your beliefs about what's possible. But transforming your life, it doesn't happen in a weekend. Change is instant. Transformation can be instant. Evolution takes time.
Right. So the next question is, of those 3 things, which is the hardest for people to do and why, and how do they get over that?
Well, yeah. So More people in America fear public speaking than death. I was one of those people. You know, if you'd asked me if I wanted to speak in front of a group or, you know, die, it'd be a tough choice. I'd probably pick speaking, you know, and in the end, well, if it really is between death or cake, I'll take cake. You know?
Right. So that's hard.
I'd wait right to the deadline before I made the decision. I've noticed a lot of clients sort of disappear on me, not forever, but they, you know, they start being evasive when it gets to, you know, designing their talks. There's a couple secrets I'll tell you. First of all, nobody knows how it's supposed to go except for you. So, you know, just like you're the only one who knows how it's supposed to go. And that should give you some freedom. Nobody's judging you. In fact, they're probably terrified to be up there, and they're thinking, God, if I was up there. And the other is that, what is the other? Oh, sometimes people misinterpret the sensations. Sometimes the sensations are actually just adrenaline appropriately preparing you for action. Sometimes it is actually, you know, you're imagining it going poorly, which is how the structure of anxiety is imagining a future event with a negative outcome. So, you know, that movie you're playing over and over in your head that has you, you know, not doing well, we can change the movie. And then, but the other thing is, you know, you just got to do it a lot. You know, people go, how did you get so comfortable speaking? I gave 100 presentations. And after that, you realize you're not going to die, right? The fight or flight thing stops. Whether it's approaching someone of the opposite or the gender that you're attracted to, or whether that's, you know, speaking in front of a group. Once you realize you're not going to die, you've done it enough, then everything else is easy. You know, after 1,000 cold calls, they get easier. Or 10,000 in my case.
Yeah. Wow. I was always terrified of cold calling despite my mission experiences. But the thing about speaking was I've probably done 30 webinars or something since we started working together. And like everything that can go wrong has gone wrong. I've had my person here reset the router in the middle of a call and I dropped off and 25 people are all left hanging. So yeah. I've had everything bad happen. And like Jason says, I still survived. Like people didn't start throwing tomatoes at me, you know, or anything. So yeah.
You're just telling the truth, you know. It's like someone shut the router off. Totally, like I would just say that in an email, you know. But right. I'm kind of weird that way. I like the truth.
Absolutely, and we were able to. Yeah, I was able to get that one back. You know, you always catch it. So either I get back on the call, or so far I've always got back on. But if I couldn't, yeah, you tell people that, and people understand. Life happens, yeah. Stuff happens. So, but yeah, that's such a huge thing, that fear of speaking and overcoming that. So how do you, your primary suggestion is to practice. Anything else to get over that, I don't know what to say to a group thing?
Yeah, you're never going to know what they're going to get value from, and you're always going to give them value. So like, I've had people come up to me and go, God, the thing you said, and they tell me what it was. And in my head, I'm going, really? That thing? Out of all the stuff I said, that thing's the thing that made the difference to you? Oh, all right.
Okay.
So I stopped guessing what is going to make a difference for them and just trust that, you know, I'm a fountain of value that and I care about them. So they're going to get tons of stuff from it. And, you know, it will be the thing that I don't think is the most powerful, certainly. So just trust it, and you know, and I'll tangent that relevantly to rates. You know, are people going to pay that? Well, which people for what? You know, where? And so of course someone will pay it, no matter what it is. You know, the question is, I mean, we know of coaches that get paid $100,000 a year, right? And it's non-refundable, even if you don't like them after a month. It goes to a charity in that case. So, and they're doing quite well. So, you know, there are people out there who will pay anything for that. I think they should be blushing about some of the structures they put in place, but, you know, apparently they've come to the conclusion that that's the best way to get the most value into someone's life. But you know, are people going to get value from what you have to say? The people who came will, they'll certainly get value from it.
So I just want to underscore this, like you don't even know sometimes, you don't realize what the important part was, what you said. We think, well, do I know enough? Yeah. Do I know enough? Am I good enough? Well, the funny thing is the part that you don't even understand is just, you just think it's normal, or you've been able to do this forever. That's the thing that you say in passing that you don't even pay attention to. And people are like, oh my God, wow, that was amazing. You've changed my life. So yeah, just get out there and start sharing, just start speaking, and you'll be figuring out what's going on. You'll figure out what you should be presenting, and what's valuable to people.
Somebody, I can't say who, because his wife made me agree not to use his name anymore. And anyway, whatever. So one of my closest friends used to say that I would say stuff that was life altering, like I was pulling something from under my fingernail and casting it off. Like, oh yeah, well,
Right.
It's like, you don't realize it, the density of value that I'm like, well, it's just obvious, isn't it? It totally wasn't. That was why I needed to learn sales. I'm like, well, this is obvious. None of it's obvious. None of it's obvious. Otherwise, if it were, we wouldn't be in business.
Right. And I'm going to suggest that everybody who works with you, they have those things too, that they don't realize have that value. And,
yeah, I only work with extraordinary people.
Absolutely.
Now, the percentage of them that realize they're extraordinary is smaller, than I would like, but they come to know it. They come to know it. Just partly because of my, quiet confidence about it. I just expect greatness from people I'm around, especially my friends. But I've gotten feedback that I don't acknowledge people enough. I go, well, you're a friend of mine. Excellence is expected. Come on, you're extraordinary.
So, okay, let's move on to the next question. So when people say, okay, I don't know if I can do a long-term program, I don't know if I have enough content, or people I won't have enough, make enough money. People are expecting one-on-one individual sessions from me. What do you tell people who bring that up?
Which part?
How do I do the transition from the one individual sessions to long-term programs?
Yeah. By the way, I'm going to say something really like it's a fact. So we could do all the caveats from my perspective or in my experience. I'm just going to say this is the reality. If you don't have a package, you're never going to have enough money in this business. You cannot or build a sustainable practice. You cannot do it with one-off sessions unless you're doing like all day breakthroughs and they're, 10 grand or something. And then sure, you can get by with that. But from a couple hours a week perspective, or, you need to have a package. It's just impossible. I'll say it's impossible. You can get away with other things, but you can't get away with that one. So the transition is, you just do what you think you can do, which might be 6 sessions, it might be 12. I mean, the math that we're going to lay out predicates on the fact you'll have at least 12, I think, isn't it? Or was it a 6-month package?
It has to be 6 months to get to 100.
Okay, great. It has to be 6 months to get to 108,000. Thank you. I've been informing people.
Otherwise, double the price, and then it's 3 months.
Yeah. So let's actually demystify the math really quickly. $108,000. How do you get there? It's an odd number, right? You get there by signing 2.5 clients a month to a 6-month package at the very reasonable Bay Area, by Bay standards. People coming right out of Coaches Training Institute with almost no, real coaching skills are getting $150 an hour. I wouldn't trust somebody who was making less than $2 or $250. I wouldn't think they were competent, at least in the Bay Area. But so at $150 an hour, 2.5 clients a month, and in 6 months you'll be at a run rate or on pace in layman's terms to make 108,000 in the following fiscal year. So it's 18 months from 0 to 108,000 is what that looks like. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great.
It's in the chat window, so you guys can.
Yeah, just toss the math in there.
Yeah, it's presupposing 1 hour a week, or 2 hours, twice a month. So you can obviously change those numbers, and as long as the total stays the same, and get to 108,000. It sounds really simple. People would even go, well, why do I even need to take a course for that, though?
I can talk about that all day. It sounds simple.
I think it's gonna come up. We should.
The devil is in the details. You know, you try something, it doesn't quite work. Maybe then not I just want to say really quick, a little advertisement for one-on-one coaching as well as working with Jason was, yes, you get all of this details and you can buy anyone's course for $1,000 that tells you how to do this ABC 1, 2, 3. But the problem is you're going to run into a specific thing that is connected to you. And then you're going to need someone to troubleshoot, brainstorm, help you through that problem, that belief, that emotion that's blocking you from actually being successful in this process. So that's why.
The emotional component is the biggest one.
It's huge. Your emotions, you don't see how much they're controlling your life, your business. Okay, so next question. What is a sales system and why do people need it?
Oh, what is a sales system? Well, you're using a sales system whether you know it or not, first of all. Sometimes that sales system is chance and luck, prayer, throwing incense to the universe, whatever it is that you do. What is a sales system? A sales system is a process that you have that's formalized, it's systematized, that you can take people through. What's step 1 through 4? What do you do next? And partly that's so that you can tell them what you're doing next, and they can say, great. There's this idea of permission-based selling, which is different than the book Permission-Based Selling, by the way. I thought the phrase was appropriate. I didn't realize there was somebody who had a book and a whole system around permission-based selling. So I don't mean her work. What I mean is, some people call it pre-framing. Some people call it safe porting. Some people call it setting context, where you go, here's what we're going to do. Does that make sense to you? Is that okay with you? They say yes, you say great. And essentially you want to make sure that they never feel jolted in the process, because if you at least will have to regain rapport. They go, oh, I wasn't expecting, to do that next. I mean, that's just never a good thing. They'll settle back in, but there's still a disruption. It's a jolt. You just want to make sure that nothing is unexpected. So, here's what we're doing next. Is that okay with you? Great. Here's what we're doing next. Is that okay with you? All the way to the end. Yeah.
I love that. Here's what we're doing next. Is that okay with you? So what kind of sales system should people be using?
Well, I should be using one. I should be using mine.
Absolutely.
I should be using one that doesn't feel like sales. I've gotten phone calls from a lot of people who unfortunately have wasted money on, quote, turnkey sales systems that were developed in another business. And, in most businesses, sure, sales is sales. Yeah, I get that, In this business, it's not. This is a deeply personal business. It's very vulnerable, for them business. So there's anything that feels like sales is just not going to work nearly as effectively. And I also, while the Tony Robbins system was pretty clean, it was the cleanest I'd found to that point, I still didn't like the whole leveraging pain thing. I mean, there's enough pain in the world already. And so I set out to design a system that was, use natural design principles. What does the situation give us? Not trying to impose a system on it, which doesn't work nearly as effectively. But what's arising that gives us, the system? And at some point, I signed up 50 people in a row to a 6-month package. Well, this is pretty profound. Nobody said no. 50 in a row, 50 prospects in a row. So at that point, I started looking at what I was doing, and there were clearly patterns. The emails were looking more and more like the process was looking more and more like. And so I just modeled what I was doing that had been so effective. So one of the things about the sales system is I don't teach how to overcome objections. People think that's weird. Well, will you teach me how to overcome any objection? I say, no, I won't. Sorry, that's not this work. Sometimes they shouldn't be overcome. Sometimes they're really valid. Some people will say, gosh, well, I got this thing going on. And I just tell them, I said, well, it's entirely up to you. You have all the information. I don't. And they, they're kind of tripped out by it. They were looking for me I had a client one time who I signed, but he goes, I don't think I'm going to do this. And I said, okay. And I got off the phone with him, and a week later, and I waited because a week later I emailed him and said, I'm really curious, what went on? And he goes, well, like I found you through these podcasts, Evolutionary Sales. I was really expecting you to close me. Now, in the podcast, I go into not closing a deal, but opening a relationship. Like there's this whole set of things around it. So apparently he didn't listen to the whole thing. But I said, oh, okay, great. Well, do you still want these outcomes? He goes, yeah. I said, great. Do you think I'm competent to help you? He said, yeah, that's great. I said, what's your credit card number? And he goes, what? I said, get your fucking credit card number out. And he goes, oh, okay. And he got it out, And I said, it's not that I can't close you. It's that it's not my style. I prefer, but that's what he wanted. So I gave him what he wanted. But really, we want to create a world in which we're inspiring people towards visions, towards a larger, more integrated, more profound, deeper place. Not, hey, let's leverage your fear. What if you never handle this? And then what's your going to family life? And then take them into this horrible, ghost of Christmas future kind of thing. They're dealing with enough crap already. And here was my assertion: you could have a system that was clean, meaning didn't leverage pain, and was just as effective. And I found out I think it's actually more effective. People are selling 85%, and my close ratio for a long time, or opening rate, was something like 93 or 94%. It got around to 90. There were some hiccups that I had, but it stayed there for a long, long time. And I'm still tinkering with it. Mm-hmm. But so that's, the necessity of a sales system is so that you don't have to think about what to do next or hope, or that you know what to do next. And it also translates. People feel like you know what you're doing. I had a student who ended up signing up with me. He goes, it just felt like you knew exactly where we were going. I felt really, held, like you knew what the next step was. And of course, I did. But it translates to, they'll interpret it as professional. They interpret it as professionalism, which, believe it or not, in this business is pretty rare, apparently. When you an emotional maturity.
Right, absolutely. In the world as it is, right? We're up-leveling the world. The evolutionary guide, we're evolving things, so that's great. Yeah. The thing that happens when you push people very far from emotionally or NLP or whatever, manipulating people, basically manipulation, you're going to get a lot of buyer's remorse.
Right.
And that's what people who sell something and then they're never going to see you again. If they sell 1,000 of a package and 50% say, I want my money back, they don't care. They still made money off the 50%, but this isn't that kind of business. We're developing a relationship with people.
Yeah.
You do not want people coming back to you saying, oh, I totally didn't want to do that. So
there's two contexts in which you don't want people to have buyer's remorse. One of them is when they give you a lot of money. I think we know what the other one is.
Come to the course to find out what the other one is.
Not in that course. I like to say that the first 7 or 8 years of mastering NLP, I learned how to manipulate people, and the last 13, I've been learning how to not. And I've gotten pretty good at not manipulating people, which is, believe it or not, very difficult. You're manipulating people all the time. Most of us just don't realize it. And it could simply be by expressing your disappointment. By the way, if you're in a relationship and you're expressing disappointment, you are basically guilt tripping the person into, you're subtly shaming them without realizing it into doing what you want. It's just not people don't know that. They don't think about that. Like, well, I'm just expressing what's true for me. All right. Well, I'm disappointed that you're disappointed. Right. It's just weird.
So Rahaya asked, what does opening rate equals 93% mean? You want to talk about that?
Oh, what does it mean?
Well, I'll just say it. Well, most people talk about a closing rate when you do your business. So closing.
How many people are in your office sign? What percentage sign?
That's right.
So 93 means 93 out of 100 sign.
Yeah. So that's what that means. Good question.
Then actually get into an exploratory session. That's the important distinction.
Good question. Okay, the one thing that we haven't talked about, and we have a couple more minutes to talk about it, then we're going to introduce the course, and then then we're going to take the questions. Yeah, don't forget the course. Then we're going to take the questions from the audience, which is been pretty intense here. So talk to us a little bit about designing a long-term program. A lot of people tell me, I don't know how I would do a long-term program. Maybe I don't have that much content. How do I do that?
Nobody does. When it was first suggested to me by a friend of mine who'd been doing relationship coaching for years, he goes, well, just design a 6-month program. I went, what do you mean just design it? And he goes, oh, actually, he didn't say that. He said, just sign them up for 6 months. I said, well, how do I design that? And he goes, you just sign them up for 6 months. Like, stuff will come up every week. And I went, yeah, I'm not doing that. You know, like, I'm not just signing. I have to have a framework. I feel like that's out of integrity. He thought I was being silly. I thought I was, just being professional. But it took me a month of, I love my mind. I set it to task on something and it figures it out. It's like when you can't remember that movie star's that person's name or whatever. Oh, who's that person that was in that film? And, it comes to you the next morning. I did that intentionally with my mind a lot. And one of them was, how do I design a program? Right. And I've been studying everything I knew everything I needed to know. I just didn't realize it. It was part of it. Part because while we talk about NLP a lot today, integral theory is really my primary influence in terms of the work that I do. I just don't talk about it a lot because it's really geeky stuff. Nobody cares. And maybe they shouldn't. I think it's great. What they care about is the results in their life. But how you design a program, some of it will be obvious. If you're coaching people on relationships, don't teach them, don't have them go out practicing dating skills when they're still resentful over the last relationship. They're still in grief. Like, clear out the grief and the resentment first so that the dates go well. Some of it's pretty obvious. Help somebody resolve their anxiety before you tell them to go, engage in public speaking. It'll just be easier for them. Some people think it's, takes too long. It's like, well, that'll take more time. Well, doing it the other way takes even more time. So it's a myth that you can skip over that and save time. I've tried it. For a while I tried to indulge clients. They thought they felt complete about everything in the past. Okay, great. It's never true, by the way. It's never accurate, I should say. It's truthful, but it's not accurate. So they're telling the truth. They're not lying, but I think that's an important distinction. Truthful is subjective. Accurate is objective.
So what I'm hearing you say is you think about the steps that people go through in solving the problems that you solve, and you design a program around that. Yeah,
I recommend 3 phases to the program, partly because it's easily divisible by 3 months or 6 months. Mm-hmm. And that's not so insignificant, by the way. Mm-hmm. But also because 3's a good number for people to get their heads around. They understand 3. First we do this, and then this builds on that, and then this builds on that. People get that. People don't get, like, I know somebody who designed like a 7-stage thing. Right. Nobody's listening after 3. Nobody cares. And all you're doing is trying to get smart points or something. Or maybe you actually think that they're going to follow that. They're not. So you're doing them a disservice. You're over intellectualizing it. 3 phases or stages. And it should just be logical. First you do this, then you do that. Or to do this, first you must do this. And then to do this, first you must do this. It's the other way to reverse engineer it. What do you want them to be? What did they need before that to do that? And before that, what do they need to do that?
I love that. Reverse engineer it.
It's part of the way why the course is designed the way it's designed. I was talking to Destin, and he goes, "You're so good at structuring this stuff." I said, "Well, it just actually makes logical sequencing sense to me. I'm not sure how to teach that, but we give you lots of examples in the course."
Okay, so let's talk about the course. Talk to us about it. What's coming up? How do we learn all this stuff in detail that you've been talking about?
Everybody should come. If you sign 1 more client as a result, you'll make your money back. If you sign 2, you'll double your money back. Don't be silly. Come to the course.
When's it starting? Yeah.
Oh.
Give us a few more details.
Oh, come on, man. All right, hang on.
Starting in May now, is that right?
May 16th, I think. I just want to make sure I get everything accurate.
Well, we have a website where all the details are there.
That's where I'm going.
Okay, we'll put up the website for everybody else. Well, we'll put it up after you talk about it. So Jason is teaching a course. I believe it's 5 weekends over 6 months.
It's 4 months, 5 weekends.
4 months, 5 weekends. Okay, exactly. Plus calls in between.
Yeah, so May 16th and 17th, June 13th and 14th, July 11th and 12th, August 8th and 9th, concluding September 19th and 20th. I know that's fast. You won't be able to write that down. We'll send it out to you.
Right.
All the dates are Saturdays and Sundays. It's 1 weekend a month. And in between each weekend, there's going to be 2 webinars like this, drilling down into the material that we covered all weekend. The first weekend is emotions and self-esteem. So, ego, self-esteem, internal, external validation, personal versus practical, your value versus your worth, which is your efficacy. All of those are different ways of saying your efficacy and your self-worth, or your feeling that you are appropriate to life, that you are worthy of receiving. Those 2 components, we flush those out entirely, and we look at some of the ways in which you're collapsing the distinctions and are causing you unnecessary suffering, or has it difficult for you to hear feedback, or has you, think that you should be charging less money and people will somehow come to you then. The opposite is true, but we have to look at your worthy, you accepting, not learning, but accepting that you're worthy of receiving. That part's a settled matter. We all have equal worth. That's why we send money to Africa, run into burning buildings to save people, but we all have different value in the marketplace. Those are separate. When we collapse the 2, we get all sorts of confusion. So, and then, anxiety, fear, guilt around money, all sorts of interesting stuff around guilt around money or shame around money, and the belief that money and spirituality are somehow in conflict.
Big one.
I wrote some behemoth article, I think it was 5 parts, on how the most spiritual economic system is capitalism. Except nobody knows what capitalism is because we've never actually seen it. And, we have this idea that corporatism or mercantilism it's not, So when people say what's capitalism, I can actually define it, and most people can't. And it's the liberty to freely associate for mutual benefit. That is it. Anything involving force or fraud, that's outside the game. That's against the rules. And that actually covers everything. We just make it more complicated than it is.
Right. Well, I mean, you described, first of all, what you said. There was so much content in what Jason just said. Personal versus practical, efficacy versus, there was another one, so value versus worth, all of that stuff. I mean, this is a lot of content that you're going to get. He tried to squeeze this into 1 weekend, and I was like, no, we're going to do this on 5 weekends because there's so much here.
This is the way it was originally designed. By the way, this will be about the 5th time I'm doing this course.
Right.
16. This is the way it was originally designed, to be a series of weekends once a month. And that was, the original design principles were natural design. This is what was required.
Right.
And I tried to stick that into, ever increasing small amounts of space, thinking that that's what the market wanted. I think people understand it takes time.
It does.
To integrate stuff,
It does. So that was the first weekend.
Oh, right.
And we've already talked about some of the components of these weekends, so we don't have to talk a ton about them, but go ahead.
Well, the second weekend, just very quickly, the second weekend in June is designing your program or extended offering, which is what you're selling.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's so difficult for people, we are spending the whole weekend, and we'll need more than that. That's why we have the webinars.
Right.
We're spending the whole weekend on that.
Right.
And then the third weekend in July is we teach you the evolutionary sales system, how to sell your program. Which is, let's just say it's, you want to be at 85%. I don't expect you you shouldn't expect yourself to have the same conversion rate that I did when I turned around. And you shouldn't have 100%, just don't expect it of yourself, or 90%. I will say that people who have followed the system exactly, like Destin's a great one, signed his first 8 prospects, all 8 of them, to, he made $38,000 in the first 4 months of working with me.
Right.
Because he did everything exactly as it was written and as it was spoken. He was great at that. And then he, started tinkering with stuff. But you want to learn the rules first. The fourth weekend is marketing and presentation skills, essentially how to find people to sell it to. how to get prospective clients. That's all about your free stuff. And then the fifth week, which is probably the most fifth weekend, which is probably the most underrated but most important, is integration, or putting it all together. I remember it was the third time, I kid you not, that I helped train the Power and Influence sales training, that the whole thing actually fit together for me.
Right.
Part of it was the way he walked, he was laying out each. Pete Gervais is a fantastic guy, also a Mormon, but not recovering. Each step of the way, and he laid it out, analog marking, we call it on the stage, spatial anchoring, and it finally all fit together for me. It's 3 12-hour days. It's the third time. I'll be doing that all along. We'll talk about what we covered, what the weekend's about, what's in the future. And that last weekend, you're going to have questions that you didn't predict. And we're going to work on pretty much whatever the group needs to work on, and repeat or drill down into whatever they need to work on. But it really is critical for integration. It's absolutely critical.
And if people want to participate in this, what do they do?
They contact me and we have a conversation about it.
Okay.
You just registered? No, you can't. I'm sorry. You won't find a way to buy it on the website, which is healers.evolve-co.com.
I just posted it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I can only say that first of all, I did the weekend twice that he had. Then I've worked with Jason on his full 6-month program, and we've stretched it out a bit. And I mean, it did take me a few months to put all the pieces together. It's like driving a car when you first start. You've got your signaling and your mirrors and your, everything, and you have to watch the traffic and the signs. Yeah. And then after a while, it's like, you're on your phone and drinking coffee. We're not doing that anymore. But, at 100 miles an hour, and it's no big deal. But it takes a while to get all these pieces together and working. So time to do that is really important.
Yeah, there's somebody who also teaches practitioners how to build their business, and he offers half what I offer for twice the price. And I've wondered, is that more palatable for people, even though it's twice the money? Well, it ends up being 4 times the money, right, or something like that.
If you're
because you need to do 2 of his programs. You need to do the $8,000 and the $12,000 program to get the whole thing. And then are you even getting all of this? Probably not. But it just takes a lot of time, and I think people have unrealistic expectations. We all know that self to other comparisons are silly.
Right. Yeah.
Less, but the more insidious comparison is self to ideal fantasy self that you made up, and then you're beating yourself up for not being that thing that you made up. So just give yourself lots of room you should be making lots of mistakes. As you know from my life.
So I just want to say I visited a half dozen of these courses in the Bay Area. A lot of people give away a free weekend where they'll upsell to this $8,000 program where you don't get any time with the person, in a room of 500 people, and you're signing up for a course, and there's going to be 50 or 100 people. Let me just, I could go on a long time, but I found the most value with Jason, the way he does it, the way he presents it, and the depth that he has, and that he's personally doing this. I feel like he's fighting, or he's punching under his weight quite a bit still. So prices are going up. If you're on his list, you've seen this. He's getting more expensive. He's working with more and more exclusive clients. And so this is going to be, not fake, but this is the last chance to dive in like this with him right here. I'm expecting him to be in a completely different place by the next time this rolls around. So if you do want to, also you can work with him one-on-one, just so you know. So that is something to talk about. You can ask him about that, or ask about this program.
Starts the same way. Email me and say you want to talk.
See, go to Jason at evolve-co.com. We can put that into the chat as well. Now let's go through some of the questions that people had so far. Catherine asked, do you offer online-only group course for business skills training? You want to talk about that? No, it doesn't exist. Sorry. Not at the moment. But you can work one-on-one. But you can work one-on-one with you at a distance, right?
Yeah, but 50% of my clients I've never met in person.
Right.
We use this same platform, Zoom.
Okay. So you can do that, but you can't. But this course is going to be in the Bay Area, in San Francisco. Yeah, for live for all of these.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go through other questions. I think we got that one answered. How do you deal with emotionally stuck clients who don't respond to your tech processes and techniques? This is from Justin Fairman.
I'm going to say something really brutal. People who don't have personal and practical distinct feel this is judgment. It's not. It's a statement of fact.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as resistant clients. There's only unresourceful or unskilled practitioners. So I would say that, there's always a way. And by the way, that gives you a lot of power if you associate there, because you're not giving the power to them. You have all the capacities. Taking responsibility means you're able to respond. You actually have you can do anything with the situation.
Responsible.
Yeah, response able. And so, what I would say is that you need to gain more skill, or you might just need to gain more rapport. It could be that there's a part of them that doesn't feel safe. And, I can count the number of conflicts I've had with clients. I don't even need one hand to, it's like 2 or 3 times there have been moments where, and it wasn't even really conflict. It was, just a bit of a bump in the road, there's only one that I had to fire. But part of that's because, 2 things. One is it's not an adversarial relationship ever, because it's about their outcomes, not about, me wanting to indulge my ego. It really is about what would best serve them. But the other thing is I don't consider them resistant at all, ever. I think about whether or not, there's some part of them that's resisting, but that's different. And so, we use the parts model, which originally came from Virginia Satir, really the founder of the field of family therapy in the 70s. And she would take family systems like parts. But if you do this with people, and they disidentify them too from the thing, and you're also suddenly not in an adversarial relationship with one little flip. Say, oh, well, there seems to be a part of you that's resistant. Is that true? And they go, yeah, there is a part of me, but now you're in partnership already around solving it. So I realize that wasn't the question, but
that's an excellent response. I would say if you really have issues with this, start working with Jason. Talk to him about how can I improve this in my own personal practice, because he will be able to find out what that part is that you're having difficulty with. Because I know I came with kind of the same question to him, and I've developed a lot.
That's right, you did.
I did, yeah. I came
with all these resistant clients.
yeah. And I've seen
all of your clients are resistant.
Yeah. And I developed quite a bit of facility around first the pre-frame. The relationship begins way before you're in the session, and like Jason says, he's really holding people. He teaches you how to pre-frame things. I filter much better now. People that work with me are definitely a match, or I send them somewhere else. I don't try and solve problems that I'm not qualified to solve, or I don't want to solve.
The other thing that we often miss is you can't solve problems they don't want you to solve. So a lot of times, like the one time I had to stop myself in the middle of a session, I went, you know what? I'm sorry, this isn't your outcome. This is what I want for you. I just stopped myself because, here she was resisting, and I went, why? This is odd. I don't experience resistance, right? And I paused and I said, you know what? I'm sorry. You didn't say you wanted this. And she didn't want it. She actually didn't want the outcome. So I just dropped it. And we will get attached, early on, you get attached to your clients doing better. And It's a dangerous place, really, because, you're going to want things for them that they don't necessarily want. Now, you can get by and you can say, I see this for you. Is that something you would like? And they say, well, yeah. I say, okay, great. Then you have permission. But don't assume that they want their life to be better in a certain area. I had somebody who kept giving me unsolicited coaching because they thought I wanted to be the guy up on stage, like the Tony Robbins 2.0. I said, I don't want that. You know what? And she couldn't stop and ask me permission. So over the course of about 6 months after, she wouldn't respect the boundaries. So I just ended the friendship. But it's that kind of thing. It's like, look, you're giving me advice on something I don't want.
Right.
And we just notice where we do that.
Right.
As young coaches, as veteran healers, it becomes less and less of a problem.
Right. It's a powerful stuff. Okay, I may have missed questions that people have that are further up the chat window, so feel free to do that.
Did we say it would be 1 hour? Is that?
I don't know if we said exactly how long it would be. I tend to not say that.
Yeah, good. Do you have more time? Can we get some of these questions, or
I can handle more questions if people have them. Go ahead and put them in. If you have to leave, you can leave, but Jason and I can stick around.
If you have a burning question, please re-enter it or enter it into the chat window so we can
please. And are you okay with taking verbal questions as well, or do you just want to?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So August wants to talk to us. I saw she had a question previously that we have not gotten to yet. And okay, so I'm going to unmute you, August. Can you?
Excellent. So I'm a tantrika, and I've been doing my work for close to 4 years. And as expected, over time, it's deepened. And really, my work is dealing with the masculine and feminine flow of energy and really empowering men to, instead of tricking their women and begging to have sexual attention, and developing them and being strong, present men who are in service. Now, I can't say that on my ad. No man is going to come see me. I got to put a pretty picture. And, so it seems to me like there's a little bit of a bait and switch. And honestly, I'm okay with that, right? Because if I'm marketing myself in the adult industry, there's a certain standard, right? So when men go through my screening process, I make it really clear what I do, right? So it seems like...
Well, let's go back to I can't say that in an ad. Why not?
Well, because most men, until they sit with me and they look into my eyes and I work with them, they still think what they want is to touch boobies.
It was rhetorical.
Got it.
So good marketing, the best marketing is entering a conversation that's already happening in somebody's head.
Right.
And there's a lot of men going, God, I wish I didn't have to trick women because there's all this crap out there teaching, really all a man needs to do to attract a woman is be present, be on purpose, and have his attention on her. It's all you need.
On her, not like on her tits, but on her heart.
Yeah, on her, noticing aspects of her that most people don't is the way I like to think of it. And, it's easy to say, but there's all this other thing out there. But that conversation is happening in a lot of men's heads. And if you said it, they would feel like you're the oasis from all that manipulative crap that they think they have to learn. That doesn't feel aligned anyway. Like they know it's wrong. Everybody does. Everybody knows it's off. There isn't anybody going, well, it's really awesome to have to manipulate people. I don't think. Maybe they're wrong.
So I get that. And what I'm grappling with is I'm working with Ryan, right? And, at this point in my practice, I'm coming out of the dark and putting my name out there and, a coach and a chemistry coach and whatever. And, right now I still have to get clients from the adult websites. And, and even like Brian and I put together a webinar for next week, and we still had to use this language of this kind of banal, kind of titillating language to get men's attention. Because if I spoke it the way I would speak it, men would just be like, whatever, I'm not really interested.
Maybe. I'm going to challenge the word should there though,
Okay.
I question the premise. I think it's not accurate. Now it could be that your current list wouldn't respond as well as you would like, but that's about finding the people who do. And I think there's a much larger segment out there, and I really think that you'll be surprised. It's funny. I had somebody she's also a tantrika, but her whole thing is that most tantra people who say they're tantrikas, it's bullshit. They're really just escorts that charge a little bit more, and
use a feather.
Really, I want sacred sexuality to come back, and there's all this other icky stuff. And I said, great, say all of that. And she goes, what? I go, write all that. There's, two worlds in the tantra world. One that's really about sacred sexuality, and the rest is all crap, and it's icky, and just say all of it, and you'll distinguish yourself immediately because everybody knows that. Everybody knows that in the Bay Area. There's this, 90% when they say tantra, it's really not. And so immediately distinguish yourself and speak to a conversation that's already happening in people's heads.
Right.
This is a go ahead.
Well, so specifically, so Ryan and I put together this webinar, right?
Let's not go too deeply into this, August, because other people might have questions. But
think of it this way: it's just about telling the truth.
Yeah,
and just be suspicious if you think that people aren't going to hear the truth. To be suspicious about it.
Yeah, this is a self-definition issue. This is how you're seeing the issue, and not how it really is.
Okay. I got it.
So and we're moving toward that together, and you're doing a great job. Good for you. But yeah, we don't, this is a giant, I had a huge webinar last week about this. You don't have to bait and switch. You can be you. And
in fact, you shouldn't. In fact, it's counterproductive.
Yes.
To bait and switch.
Yeah. So
counterproductive.
In some ways, a lot of people start working with sexuality, and that's how they start because they think they have to.
It's like a pickup artist, only you're not only you're not trying to get laid. And that's what it's like.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So we're moving that. You're moving that. You're doing a great job. Thank you, Jason, for all that feedback about that.
My pleasure.
Okay, Brooke had something to say. Is that all right for now, August? Did you get answers? Or?
Yeah, I'm good. We can move forward privately.
All right. I will give you a lot of time. We'll work through this.
And read Brooke's comment that she just posted. It's really great.
Because I have the pretty, do we see? I'll just read it for people who do not have. I have a pretty opposite experience. I find when I lead with too much sexuality, I find less clients or clients that I want.
Especially that last part, the clients you want.
Yes, and that's the important thing. I never post sexy pictures or explicit content, even though I advertise on Backpage under Body Reps. I could see why you'd be scared to change, but my experience is the opposite. When I lead with professionalism, I have no problem finding gems off that page.
You also won't have trouble drawing boundaries because they're already in place. And there's one thing when I was talking to Triambika about this course, she goes, "Are you going to teach boundaries?" And I said, "Well, to sexual healers." I said, "Well, not really my area, but I'll say it's a lot easier if you tell the truth up front." There's somebody who is in this market space who, she intentionally misleads them about what's available to them until they get there, and then she tells them what's not available. And it's caused her a lot of problems. And I said, "Well, you're just not telling the truth. Like, I hate to keep beating the drum, but you're lying." And so, of course, you're going to have trouble drawing boundaries when you're telling them this is available. They think it is. And then they get there and you say it's not. And there's still, they traveled all this way and paid all this money. And that's that's all the way out on that. I know you're not doing anything like that, but it's a similar set of principles.
It's the pre-framing that you said. It's one step of pre-framing, or what do you call it?
An ounce of pre-framing is worth a pound of reframing.
That's one of my favorite quotes of Jason. And one thing that I used to do is I used to pull people in all the time with, well, if I get them in and then I give them my full intensity, but I didn't seem that intense at the beginning, then at least they'll get in my world. And I found I did the same thing, but it was wrong, because people would show up and they get shocked because they weren't used to that intensity in my marketing or in my communication until that point. So now I'm more myself from the beginning. When people step into that world, it continues on that frame. So it's the exact same thing that you're talking about. And I've gone through this process over the past year as well. So thank you, Jason, for helping me with that.
It's been a pleasure. It continues to be. Other questions?
Other questions? And these kind of conversations that we're having right now, this is what you have lots of time and space for in the course. We have time to really go into this, to really drill down.
That's why we're doing the webinars in between. I mean, there's plenty of time in the room too, but webinars, you're going to go away, you're going to sleep on the material, and then you're going to go, "Oh, what about this?" And we will have answers.
That's right. So, I understand there's a huge topic and we're covering it one-on-one, but if you're not covering it one-on-one with Jason or myself or someone else, then consider this course as a way to solve all these issues. And
I'm going to do something counterproductive, but say, I actually don't care who you go do this with, as long as you do get help with an ethical sales system, with authentic marketing, like all those things. I want you to be able to integrate your purpose and your wealth acquisition so that we can have a fully liberated planet. That's what I want. And to make it a more hospitable environment. People are living their purpose rather than going to jobs they hate. And we're just going to have a much better world. So
that's right. Okay, other questions? If not, thank you, everybody, for coming. It's been great to have you here. It's been great to hear Jason share on a deeper level about where he's coming from and everything. There's a dog and what he's offering. So,
he agrees. He agrees.
He agrees. All right. This has been approved by Mr. Dog. If you have any more questions, issues, comments, or want to talk to Jason about the course, you can reach him at jason@evolve-co.com.
Any questions are welcome.
And all questions are welcome, or the course is at healers.evolve-co.com. I already posted in the chat. So Thank you everybody for coming. Any final words and brilliance that you want to share before we sign off, Jason?
Come to the course. You're silly not to.
Okay, come to the course. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to contribute to you. Thank you. If it weren't for people like you who are looking to develop and integrate yourselves, then I wouldn't be able to live my life purpose. So thank you.
Okay, we have some thank yous coming through from the chat as well. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, Jason, for presenting.
My pleasure.
And there will be a replay. We'll send this out. So
yep.
thank you. Have a nice day, everybody.